So, today we're gonna talk about Julie and Tim Nist. They had a good life. They lived in a beautiful home, had a successful landscaping business, and overall, it was a happy couple. Julie became a local celebrity in their town, their own star. You see, the Trenton newspaper was running a contest for their local pin-up girl, and Tim took a picture of Julie and sent it in. Julie was such a beautiful woman. She had dark hair, almond-shaped eyes, thin, beautiful smile, and they love her. And that's how she gained the local celebrity status that made her into later on a swimsuit model. Later on, the couple had a beautiful daughter, and her name is Katie. Julie was so excited about having Katie. She was happy, glowing, and overall couldn't wait to start her own family. But unfortunately, she started to suffer postpartum depression and was having a really hard time losing the baby weight. She missed her fun job where she felt pretty and everything was lighter. Now everything seemed like a responsibility, and she was in charge of a lot. She was going to school. She wanted her engineering degree. She was also being a mom, being a wife, working. And that is when the couple started fighting and growing apart, according to Tim. But they really loved each other and they wanted to work on it. So when their daughter was only 1 year old, they decided to go on a vacation. They were attending counseling and working on their marriage. So this was a well-deserved Caribbean cruise. In one of their stops, they went to this island, and people would get out of the cruise ship and just hang out at the beach, go to the local bar, stay around, but enjoying the nice weather. And Julie was floating on a raft around a bunch of other people, so she wasn't alone in the water. Suddenly, this guy swam up to her and started talking to her. I mean, it was very common that people would talk to her according to her husband, because she was not only gorgeous, but she was very friendly and loved to interact with people. Now this guy that swam up to her, his name is George Skidopoulos, and he was the cruise ship third engineer. He not only introduced himself, but he also introduced some of his friends. And the weird thing, to me anyways, is that when he introduced Julie to his friends, he said, "This is the woman I am going to marry." Again, I think for most of us, it's a kind of a bold move, and I don't know if I would have been flattered or guess that she didn't find it creepy. George knew that she was married and that she was with her husband on the cruise. But after the vacation was over, instead of letting it go, he pursued this forbidden relationship. They kind of bonded on both having similar childhoods and upbringings, and they kept in touch after the trip was over. But 2 months after that first vacation, Julie tells her husband, I booked another vacation. Tim wondered where. She said, the same cruise. I loved it. There's this kid in a bike, super loud, that needs to go to the jungle, and he is going up and down the main road, and it seems like it's right here. So if you can hear that, I hope that it's not too distracting, because I've tried to record this video way too many times, and he always comes back. That's the wonders of living in the country. It is very rare to find a police officer around here, so kids like to speed. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. So again, they were going to a vacation to the same cruise. Tim seemed like, I watched this interview, and he seemed like totally my type of guy, like nice, confident, sweet, and I guess he just didn't suspect anything. I don't know if Julie was very careful in the beginning, but all I can say is that her husband, Tim, had no idea. No, they went on this cruise, the second one, and it was the same crew, same third engineer, and he charmed her like they would meet after her husband would go to sleep, and they started a secret relationship while on this trip. She poured out her heart to him, and Tim still didn't suspect anything. But when they came back from the second trip, Julie told her husband that she needed some time. Tim described Julie as like a strong woman, someone who could take care of herself, tough, and a little sneaky. And even while they were still married, but separated, she would, or taking their time, she would still work at their home office for their business, and she would fax George letters to Greece, silly ones, saying I love you with hearts and kisses kind of stamped into the paper, stuff like that. So much so that their phone bill for that month was $7,000. Then, at that point, everyone knew. So she decided to fly George to New Jersey, where she lived. She was, and this is part of that interview, but the husband was telling the story that she was somewhere, and Tim had to go pick her up, and Tim asks her, where's our daughter, where's Katie, and she said she is staying home with George. I mean, the husband couldn't believe it. I mean, could you believe it? George, her was staying at their home, and now he was staying with their daughter. Okay. So next, more of a traditional American man, and he was attractive, good-looking man. But this other guy, George, he was younger. He was even younger than Julie. I think he was 24 and she was 30-something. A difference in age. He was more like a skinny guy, darker skin, more like your typical Greek people, with their, I don't know, completely different kind of guy. So I guess that's why, they couldn't understand why she was so in love with him. But it just didn't make sense. How can an intuitive, street smart girl fall in love with that guy? One of her friends described her, Julie's feelings as like being under a spell. I think that for the most part, and this is something that was briefly touched on, her friends saw her in a way that Julie didn't see herself in. Her friends thought that she was, this strong woman that wouldn't let anybody tell her what to do. I don't know, like secure. But really, Julie at that time, she was struggling. She was feeling insecure. She was drinking. She was doing cocaine. She was depressed. And she was trying to numb whatever she was feeling. Even though on the outside she seemed like she could take on the world. Another thing that the family noticed is that this guy was trying to pull her away from her friends and family. Obsessive, possessive, and everyone could see it but Julie, which is a typical situation. Every time she made plans to go somewhere with her friends, even meet for lunch, he would make her cancel with some excuse. George had this huge disagreement, I guess, with Julie's mom, and during that disagreement, he grabbed her by the neck, almost choking her. The mom was telling him that she didn't like him manipulating her daughter and breaking up her marriage. I believe that Julie was present when this happened, and she took it like he was being protective of her and defending her. However, her husband, Tim, put a restraining order against this guy and kicked him out of the house. I mean, he was kind enough to let him stay in the first place, but when the divorce was final, Julie tells Tim that she's planning to move to Greece and that she wanted to take Katie, their daughter, with them. Tim said, you can go, but Katie's not going anywhere. Julie didn't take it so bad. She thought that the responsibility of being mom and dad was going to get to him, and that he soon enough was going to send her to Greece. While she was still in the US, she went to pick up her friend, and they went wedding dress shopping because Greece. Her friends tried to do like a little intervention, but she wouldn't listen. Her friends were okay with her dating, but they assumed that when Tim said no, you're not taking Katie, that she would come to her senses and stay away. But she didn't. She was excited. She wanted to start a new home, new husband, new country, new business. She was going to leave everything that she knew for him. Now, in Greece, they were planning to move to Kavala, where George was from. And she visited Kavala before that summer. She actually stayed at the Kavala seaside resort. And Kavala is a local's paradise. It's beautiful, as is most of Greece, but this particular spot is for the locals that when they want to go spend the weekend or their vacations away from the tourist, they basically all book rooms in Kavala's hotels and they have a great time. Beautiful beaches, bars, nightclubs, beautiful resorts. I mean, it was paradise. But now they were moving as a couple to Kavala, and it was December, so if this becomes a ghost town, all the resorts, hotels, bars, and restaurants are closed. A total different vibe, almost like, again, a ghost town. It reminded me when I was watching this little clip of the place. It kind of reminded me. I don't know if you are from my time of scary movies, but do you remember the movie I Know What You Did last summer? There's one of the movies that they won this radio contest, and the answer even, the answer for that question on the radio is even wrong, but they ended up winning this trip to the Bahamas. But it was, out of season, and there was a storm coming. Everything was empty. It wasn't that beautiful paradise, sunny destination. Kind of reminded me a little bit of that, the description, and when they showed the difference between, summertime and December. But that was not discouraging to her. Her first day in Greece, she opened a joint checking account with George, and they deposited $80,000. And with a heart full of dreams, they start their new life together. Now, those $80,000 was the first installment in her $600,000 divorce settlement. Their plans were to open a taxi company, and they also wanted to look for apartments to move in. And again, George was younger, and he was, I guess, not as mature as he seemed. So when they got there, they moved in with his mother. got so mad at them that they kicked them out of the house. The couple found a motel and moved in until the check cleared. On January 31st, it was Julie's first birthday away from family and friends. And when she talked to everyone back home, she sounded very different. She said that she was going to celebrate her birthday with her future in-laws, and that she had to hurry because she was drunk, and that was the only way she could put up with them. She also mentioned that she was not eating or sleeping, and kind of leading them to believe that she was really missing her daughter, her family, and her friends. A month after moving to Greece, the couple rented a car and left at dusk. It was going to be a 7-hour trip to Athens. The plan was to go pick up her stuff from customs, remember, the boxes that she sent from the States, and then get married. But the next day, a friend of Julie got this phone call from George asking where was Julie at. The friend said, "She is with you. What do you mean?" He said that they had an argument and that they were walking down the street. He had to make a phone call and she was hungry, so he stopped at the phone booth and she kept going towards the McDonald's that was nearby. He said that he would meet her there, but when he got there, she wasn't at the McDonald's. The friend immediately freaks out and starts calling everyone, including Tim, Julie's ex-husband. He, at first, was okay with the idea of Julie, disappearing on George. He said to this friend, she's probably coming home. Does she have her passport? Does she have her suitcase? The friend didn't know this information. I mean, she didn't ask this to George, who recently informed her of Julie being missing. Apparently, Julie called Tim one day to kind of chat, and after a while, he asked her, are you calling to chat? She says, no, I want to see Katie and I want to go home. Now, this was before their trip to Athens. So, in Tim's mind, Julie was ready to leave George and come back to the States. Now, the police in Greece was no American police, and they undermined her disappearance. George not only reported her missing to the police, but also to the American embassy in Athens. Even Julie's friends in the States called the embassy, trying to get help. And in one of the interviews, a friend of Julie said that the embassy told her people disappear all the time in Greece. And then they also said that probably George sold her for drugs. Now, hearing this was devastating for the friend. She started researching. She found white slavery, and that Greece was Europe's hub for human trafficking, with than 40,000 victims a year. So she was terrified, but Tim, just Julie's ex-husband, just was not buying it. He knew about the situation, but he also knew that mostly European females were lured into the sex trade and not a thing for affluent Americans. So Julie's family and friends decided to call the press. It became such a big thing that George called one of Julie's friends and asked, "Why did you call the press? People are looking at me funny," he said. Apparently, he thought that the family was gonna stay quiet and let him handle it. George then started to go to the local media, asking them to cover her story. He kept in touch with the police and the embassy. He looked upset. He cried a lot, even to reporters who saw him as a suffering boyfriend. Again, he would repeat the story to them of what happened while they had the fight on the street that day. It was just a nightmare. One of Julie's friends, I want to say Susan, just so I can stop saying one of Julie's friends. I think, and if it's not, I apologize, but let's put it a name. She called George and asked him, very subtly, where is her passport and her luggage? I mean, is it possible that she left him? He said, "No, it's not possible. I have them." Then, a week later, he said that he went to that same phone booth and that I guess he was walking with a bag and that was carrying her stuff. I don't know why he was carrying her passport, but he said that he was mugged and that they stole Julie's passport and some documents. I mean, this was a big red flag when she mentions this to Julie's family and friends. They could not believe it. So, and even one of the friends said that they knew that he was lying, but they also knew that was, kind of their only connection to Greece, other than the embassy, of course. And Julie's family did end up finding somebody, a translator. This lady would help them call the police and the embassy. And then this lady also tells them, "I know a private investigator that might be able to help you." So they hired him. And he started the investigation with George himself, who he reported was a respected guy in Kavala, that he was a good student, that he supported his mom and his brother. But then he had to go deeper, so he tapped into the family's phone. And the family was worried about George. And that's when they learned that George was a violent man who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he did some time in a mental institution after he stabbed his own father. To make things worse, this private investigator tracked supposed to go back so we don't get charged because our credit card information is there. There's a deposit being held, and it would be a big mess if you don't return a car. But it seemed like this was a small business. So when George didn't return the car on time, the owner reported it to the police. But George ended up returning it one day later. But the owner had to report to the police the state of the vehicle that he rented. Apparently, the windshield was cracked, and he said that it was because of a rock. But when the owner looked, it was broken from the inside, not the outside. The car smelled terrible, and the trunk had some blood stains. George was meeting with this reporter at the same time that this was happening. And, the reporter wanted to do like a segment and wanted George to be kind of pleading for his fiancée, but apparently George didn't want to be on camera. And he did end up doing the little segment, but everything that he said was not making much sense. So, even the reporter said, okay, they were fighting as they were walking down the street. Then he decided to stop to make a phone call in a phone booth 5 minutes away from the McDonald's where they were going. There were more phone booths closer, so why there? He wasn't really convincing, and even the reporter could see it. Back home, Julie's ex-husband had some kind of political connections. I think it was a congressman. It's always good to have your local congressman as your friend, right? And they moved a few pieces here and there, enough to push the police to question George. Maybe the fact that they found blood in the car, things reported to the police, gave them the extra push that they needed. At the station, George was crying. He was upset, but still questioned by the police. 4 hours later, he finally confessed. He told him what really happened that night. And this is what he said, or what he confessed to. That apparently, on the way to Athens, Julie tells him that she made up her mind and that she's going to move back to New Jersey and that she needed to be closer to her daughter. Now, if we think about it, that would mean losing that beautiful wife and the money and the business and everything that came with her. And if you had his bad temper, you can put 2 and 2 together here. He later described that he grabbed her by the neck, choked her, and that she collapsed in his arms. When he realized what he did, it was too late, and she was dead. So he got out of the car and started thinking how to get rid of her body without being identified. So he got in the car and drove with his dead girlfriend to a gas station. It was raining. He tried to set her body on fire, but it didn't work. Then he went to his grandma's house, grabbed a suitcase, and tried to fit her body there. nonsensical story he was trying to sell to everyone. The police needed to find Julie's body, so they asked him to take them to where he threw the body, and they found the suitcase. Some divers found the suitcase, and they even said that it was gruesome and that blood was pouring out of the suitcase. Inside the suitcase was her headless body. They looked in the sea, they looked everywhere, but they could never find her head. Now here comes the kicker. He was arrested, of course. He was tried, and he was also sentenced to life in prison. But he was also put in a prisoner rehabilitation program. So he got out 8 years later. He's now married and still lives in Kavala. Now, this is such an interesting story because it has a little bit of a movie, I would say, kind of ending, when the movie ends with that the evil, spirit or the evil person, escapes and actually, ends with that image that they escape and they're gonna somewhat come back in a second movie. I feel like in this case, that's exactly what happened. I understand that he was upset because she was leaving him. I 100% understand that. But we can only kind of control our reactions and not other people's decisions. So maybe, he had some kind of a problem. And we know that he was diagnosed with a mental illness. Well, I think it was a couple of them. But is that enough? Is that enough to excuse what he did? Because one thing would have been, he killing her in a rage. And then being kind of, maybe even reporting it to the police, like, some kind of manslaughter, or I don't know. I don't even know what the other possibility would be. Or maybe he, getting scared and throwing the body somewhere, in the water, by a beach, maybe hiding her body in a shallow grave. But he actually had enough time to go to the gas station, he got to enjoy a family, have a family and live, which is way more than Julie got. She not only never saw her daughter again, her friends, or even her country, but she's not here with us anymore. So for somebody who decided to take her life and ended such a terrible way, and what he did after that, which was even worse, I just don't understand that system. Such a terrible story, and again, some people were trying to blame her for having this other guy and, being unfaithful. But I don't care what you do morally and acceptable in today's society. I don't think you deserve to die because you